we're going to get started. I would like to introduce our topic of building a brand that grows with you, presented by Savannah Cherry. And thank you for your expertise with us today. And Savannah, you may begin.
Perfect. All right. Well, hi everybody. My name is Savannah, and I'm really excited to talk about personal brand, what that means, and how to get started. So, I guess first off, I hope everybody's been having a great conference. I know I've been having a great time myself as an alumni. But a little bit about me. So, hi, my name is Savannah again. I am the director of marketing and new business at a company here in Louisville, Kentucky called Slingshot. Essentially, we build mobile apps, software, and most exciting these days is artificial intelligence. I am personally a former mortarboard president. I was at the University of Louisville Palace chapter, go Cards, and am currently a member of the Alumni Engagement Board. I'm having a great time over there with all of the alumni. And hopefully he won't make an appearance, but outside of work and outside of mortarboard, I am a dog mom to a schnoodle named Otis, who you hopefully won't hear during our talk today. So, today, what we're going to cover is a personal brand. So, we'll cover what exactly that is and why it might matter to you, how you can define your own personal brand, even as you're still growing and evolving, how you can use your mortarboard experience to tell your personal brand story, tips for how you can showcase your brand in the real world in resumes, LinkedIn, and interviews. And then probably the most important piece is how you can make your brand flexible and grow for what's next in your life. So first, some of you may be sitting here asking what exactly a personal brand is. And as someone who's in marketing, when I hear the word brand, the first thing that comes to mind for me is maybe logos, fonts, or colors. And while those are fun to play with, that isn't, unfortunately, what we're talking about today. So, what your personal brand actually is how other people experience you. It's how they describe you when you leave the room. It's how you present yourself when you're in the room. And it's really a mix of foundationally four areas. It's your values, your strengths, your personality, and your goals. We'll get into the specifics of those a little bit, but I think most importantly, it's important to remember that your personal brand is something that evolves over time. It's changing maybe even every single day. And so, as we start to think about what our personal brand is, it's important to not tie yourself down to one. It's not locked in. You're not one person for the rest of your life. And your personal brand shouldn't either. So now the fun part, audience participation. We're gonna build a word cloud together. So you can see on screen there's a QR code. You might not hear this at the rest of the conference, but you can get your phones out and scan the QR code. If you're not able to scan the QR code, you can go to slido.com and put in the number there. That's 3936844. But within this word cloud we're trying to build, we want to put in words maybe that tie to values, strengths, goals, etc. That tie back to the question, when someone Googles you, what would you want them to learn? And so we've already got some responses in here, so please take your time and add in your own. You can do so anonymously, but we've already got some. I'm seeing even more come in, and you guys should be able to see this word cloud too. Okay, we've got committed, leader, intelligent, determined. Got a lot of people saying determined. That's great. Reliable, confident. We heard that from Dr. McMillan yesterday. The importance of being confident and collaborative. Um, wow, great job, guys. This is great. This is a lot. Great on the audience participation. There was part of me that worried there would be no words in the word cloud. So, yeah, this is great. Okay, I think determined ended up being our biggest word. Um, Obviously, a very good thing to have as the basis for your personal brand. But as you look at the word cloud, maybe maybe words that jump out to you, maybe words you didn't think about as being important to you. Maybe some of those carry them with you as we talk about the rest of personal brand. So now let's get a little bit deeper into the beginnings of what a personal brand is for yourself. The foundations here that we'll talk about is really our starting point. So we need to build from somewhere. So as if we're building a house, it's going to be important to start with the foundation. So first we have values. So these are things what matters most to you. So this is really going to be the heart of what your brand is. So maybe ask yourself the questions, what gets you up in the morning? What areas of your life are the most important? Try not to have an existential crisis. But maybe it's things like integrity. Maybe it's creativity, curiosity, compassion, another word that starts with C. If you're someone who is maybe always stepping up and taking charge, maybe leadership is the most important to you. If you're someone who really cares for others deeply and you genuinely want to make sure that everybody is at their best, maybe service and empathy are key values for you. These are the things that really you want people to feel when they interact with you on a daily basis. Next, we have strengths. So, what do others come to you for? So, another ask yourself when friends, classmates, teammates, maybe even colleagues are stuck or having issues, what are some of the places that they come to ask you for help for? Or maybe what are the areas that you like to step up to and help with? Maybe you're like me and you proofread so many papers in college and still proofread to this day. Maybe you're a strong collaborator and detail oriented then. If you're someone who rallies behind people and tries to get everybody excited and moving in the right direction, that could point towards leadership or strategic thinking. And it's also important on the flip side to acknowledge what your weaknesses are. Maybe what are the things that scare you or you get a little anxious when people ask you to help with? Because it's important to understand the areas in your life where you shine and you're excited. And it's also important to think about the areas that, again, like the keynote Dr. McMillan spoke about yesterday, where are areas that you can collaborate with others? Next is your interests. What makes you light up and get excited to talk about things? Think about something you could talk about maybe for hours at a time without getting bored. And I think important here, it doesn't have to only be business related things or school related things. Those are obviously important to think about. Um, but being your authentic self, again, back to the keynote, you don't have to really fit inside the lines with this. It's important to just figure out maybe what you're obsessed with. So maybe that's storytelling, maybe that's tech innovation, or maybe you're like me and you get a bi-weekly newsletter that has a bunch of charts in it and you love to talk about charts. But really, at the end of the day, it's your interests matter because they're one of the best ways to show your authentic self. In best case scenario, you might find somebody else who also shares those passions with you. Lastly, we have impact. Where are areas in your life that you've made a difference? And so, even though you're maybe early in your adult careers, you've definitely already made an impact in your life. Maybe you've mentored a student, helped a new friend, planned a fundraiser, tutored, spoke at an event, helped build community events. There's so many different areas that you've probably had an impact that you maybe didn't even think about. And even small wins are a part of your personal brand. You don't have to wait until you have a job title or a graduate position in the field that you want to be able to start talking about impacts that you've made. And great news, you've already got a massive piece of the puzzle in your pocket now that you're a part of Mortarboard, because Mortarboard is part of your personal brand story. But mortarboard is more than just a line on a resume or a point you can add as something that you did in college. Mortarboard is a 100-plus-year-old organization, and that credibility that ties with that is extremely important, especially when it comes to sharing your experiences and the areas in which you shine. It's also an important lens that can help frame some of the parts of your story to give it more dimension and again tie it back to that piece on credibility. So it's been on every slide, and I'm not, it's on there multiple times now, but Mortarboards at its core is focused on scholarship, leadership, and service. And so that is a great lens to help tell parts of your story through Mortarboard. So this year, at some point, you're going to have a service project, maybe multiple, that you're doing through your chapter. And maybe you can talk about part of what you've done for that service project in the future. That way you can share how you can show initiative. This year, as juniors and seniors in college, you're going to be balancing academics along with your responsibilities within Mortarboard. So it's going to be important that you have discipline. And so it's great that you now have a great example of times when you had to have discipline. Lastly, you're going to be building a community with your Mortarboard chapter this year. Maybe that's within the chapter itself, with faculty and staff at the university, maybe even people within your community. You're going to have to show collaboration and work together to get to a common goal. And so that Mortarboard is going to be a great example of how you can share a time that you did that. So we've talked about what a brand is and how you can start to build it, how it starts to take shape. But I think it's important as someone who's a hands-on learner that you seek some of the ways that your brand can happen in action. So I've got some examples here from my personal life. I hate that photo of myself, but it's the closest thing I have for interview, but we don't want to get ahead of ourselves yet. But I wanted to start with resume because it's one of the areas where your personal brand can maybe start to take shape. Maybe it's the first space where you're starting to think about how your personal brand goes from an idea to a physical thing. Um, and so chances are all of you are going to be creating a resume of some kind in the near future. Maybe that's for a job application, maybe it's for postgraduate work. Either way, you're going to start nailing down what your resume is going to look like. And so here, when it comes to personal brand, your resume really shouldn't just be a list of tasks. It should be a high level summary of who you are and what you do, which is your brand. It's important to call out some of the parts of your brand that are most important to you. So for me, I call out up top in my own resume how how I am a great communicator and a team player, and how I might be able to bring that to whatever position I'm looking for. Um, in marketing, there's a phrase where we talk about show, don't tell. So you don't want to just say verbatim, I did this. You want to be able to show and add experience and dimension. So that's especially important when it comes to your resume and sharing your brand story. So, for example, again, from my own experience, you don't need to just say that you did sales work or you helped with sales, but maybe you want to call out specific revenue numbers, maybe how you increased the number of leads. You really want to show your brand story. You don't want to just tell it. Moving on to LinkedIn, and depending on the area or industry of work that you're in, LinkedIn maybe isn't a big deal. Maybe you're like me and LinkedIn is unfortunately a big deal. But LinkedIn really is a great tool for helping kind of explain your personal brand to people that maybe never will see your resume. Maybe it's colleagues, networking, etc. There's other ways to show your personal brand outside of your resume. And so your LinkedIn is a place to do that. So if you haven't made a LinkedIn before, usually you go in and you can add in your job experience and things that you've done, like Mortarboard. But it will just auto-generate the job title in the company you've worked with if you don't add to it. So, my advice is to add descriptions and share specific examples within your experiences, maybe even more than what's in your resume since you have a little more space to do so. You can also share more in the About section. So, you can tell a little bit more about your story, or maybe you should show a little bit. That's a better way to say it. But the idea is that you can talk about the values you have, even talk about your strengths, and maybe even kind of like I do, talk about some of the interests you have, and get what gets you excited. And then, while maybe not as fun as posting on other platforms, it is would be great if you can post about some of the real and authentic experiences you're having because that adds another layer of depth to your own personal brand. And then lastly, we're to this photo for interviews. So interviews are where you get to tell your story that helps to reflect your brand. So we're no longer looking at a piece of paper or a profile online. This is your true, authentic self showing up in real life. Um, your brand really should come through in how you answer questions, the horrible tell me about yourself or in 30 seconds, who are you and what do you do? While not fun, it's definitely important to be thinking about your personal brand and how you can show your authentic self through those answers. And I think it's important when you're thinking about interviews to think about it more than just job interviews. You want to be able to share your authentic self when you're speaking with anyone. So think networking, emails, phone calls, just in-person one-on-one talking. Really anything can be a interview for your personal brand story. And it's also important to not memorize verbatim what you want to say. So maybe don't memorize a 30-second speech on tell me about yourself, but maybe think about bullet points and points you want to get across when you answer that question. Because the goal isn't to sound perfect, it's to sound like you. Again, your authentic self. So I've said it a few times now, but it really is the most important piece because it all ties back to that authenticity of your brand should be growing with you as you grow. Personally, my personal brand has changed a few times since I was in your shoes at my mortarboard conference in 2019. And yours, as you change, should also be changing. If you think about it, you've never really been locked into one major. Maybe you've changed majors at some point. You're not locked into one job. You're gonna have probably more than one job over the course of your careers. And you're gonna have more than one passion. So, when it comes to thinking about your personal brand, instead of forcing everything into perfect boxes, you maybe want to ask yourself what your through line is. So, what are the constants that have always been there? What are things that have been important to you, have been strengths for a while? Um, and that thread can help tie your story together to help your brand evolve with you. And great news, you already have a brand. There's, you don't need to build something from scratch. It's not coming out of thin air. Your personal brand is built on things that have already happened and experiences you have. The important thing here is that you just need to shape it with some intentionality. Um, Everything that we've talked about so far can be thought of through the lens of who you are right now and where you want to be next. And of course, from where you're sitting now, Mortarboard is giving you the credibility to build your personal brand. So now you can take that piece and tell your story through it. So that's what I have for personal branding. And so I'll open the floor now for Q&A. If we're able to, I'm not sure if I can see I think I see the overall conference chat. Um, but if you guys have any questions on personal brand, we can start there. And then if you guys have questions about mortarboard in general, like I said, I was a president. I've been where you're sitting right now, so I'd be happy to help and answer any questions that I can.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, as a person, you kind of grow as you're like living life. So,
Mhm.
stay like how do you stay consistent with your brand while your brand is actively changing through your life experiences?
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you keep your brand consistent as you're growing as a person? I think it ties back to that through line. So for me personally, um, being like empathetic and caring about other people, that's something that's been important for me since I was probably in elementary school, middle school, and is still important to me today. And the way that I maybe talk about that specific piece of me changes as I grow. The specific experiences around that, there's new ones all the time, every day. And so it might be more about figuring out the pieces for you that tie back to that part of yourself, and then changing or updating the experience or how you speak about that as you grow as a person. Does that answer your question, Abby?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. All right. And Jacqueline, I see you shared your LinkedIn in there. Yes, I'd be happy to stay connected. I'll go ahead and jump to the next slide, because I would love to also stay connected with all of you. We can go back to questions in a second. I think we actually have maybe 2 minutes. I'm not entirely sure, but I would love to stay in touch with everybody. My LinkedIn is on screen, so feel free to connect with me there. I also have my personal work email on the screen, and well, I guess the QR code takes you to my LinkedIn. That might be helpful. And I would be happy to connect on anything. It can be about mortarboard, where you're at now, what the year maybe looks like ahead of you. If you have questions about marketing or tech, that's the industry I'm in, so I'd be happy to answer questions there. If you have questions about your personal brand, maybe even resumes, chat one on one. And if you're within driving distance of Louisville and you need maybe a person to come to an event or something, I would be happy to be a friendly face. All right, my LinkedIn is blowing up, so I appreciate it, guys. My phone is right in front of me, and I'm excited for all of you over the next year. It's going to be a great time, so enjoy it. There's going to be stressful moments, but you guys got this. You've gotten this far, and you're gonna have a great time.